We've had some people who have accidentally treated an AI as though it were a person.
Yeah.
And then bad things start happening.
It's like somebody just came up with a new jet engine that you can strap to your back. It's like, oh, geez, how am I going to use this, right? If it doesn't kill me first, I'm going to the moon,
What I think they've missed is that there is a non-zero chance of doom from us simply fracturing about what we believe is true, and citing these seemingly neutral, disinterested, analytical robots as our authority for what's true. Theologically, I would say we have a telos. We have a purpose. It's a God-given purpose. Today, there's no AI that has has a purpose towards which it is straining and moving. What happens if the AI discloses how to create a chemical weapon? The mistake is to imagine that it's a functional difference that distinguishes humans and AIs. If you take that approach, you're eventually going to be wrong. Intelligence is valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of the reasons why people with higher IQs, on average, do better in life, not just economically, but socially and in all ways that we care about. Even health-wise, they're going to do better because they may have access to different information. They may think about it differently. They may make different life choices.
More informed decision.
Right. There's all kinds of human thriving, human flourishing benefits that arise from intelligence.
Yeah.
So intelligence is valuable, and what we have now is a non-human intelligence.
Yeah.
So that's all. There's all kinds of implications of that, which I'd love to get into with you. But just specifically on the business model question, the idea is that if more intelligence equals more capabilities, we can do more things, we can achieve more, we can achieve things that we can pursue our goals. We can use a tool that helps us pursue our goals when we have more intelligence.
Yeah.
So intelligence is valuable. And then how you monetize that, that's where you get into business models of subscriptions or, per usage pricing, like you pay for electricity by the meter or the water meter at your house.
Yeah.
So there's that. So there'll be different ways that it's monetized, but fundamentally intelligence is valuable. And so the question is and we can think of lots of ways in which it's valuable. One of the recent ways is the idea of the AlphaFold, which is the AI that knows how to fold proteins, and it can do this in software, and it can predict certain medical applications of a certain molecule, and it can do that without having a massive lab that's trying millions and millions, right? It just can do it way faster, and it can narrow down to candidate molecules. That's just one example of where intelligence scaled up could produce all kinds of benefits that people want to pursue. So fundamentally, intelligence is valuable, and it will be monetized. Now, the social implications and all the other things, those are problems. So I don't mean to gloss over that at all. But these are the reasons this is being pursued, is because intelligence is valuable.
Well, but you said earlier with regard to the internet that communications was valuable.
Yes.
And so we've screwed that up a little bit.
Well, yes. Theologically, I would say that we have both drives to accomplish great things, and we have sin, right? So, as a theologian, I would say that we kind of have a propensity to do the thing that we know we shouldn't do, if you just want to put it in moral terms. And humans, that's part of human nature. So yes, whatever tool we have will be used to accomplish great things and will also be misused. And the more powerful the tool is, the bigger the problem is. So I think that's what you're touching on.
Yeah.
The power of the internet, that's super powerful. The power of the smartphone,
Right.
super powerful. The power of social media, crazy powerful. Now we see the power of AI even more powerful than those earlier ones I mentioned. So as this, the more powerful it is, the more damage we can do with it. So I agree with your intuitive concern about that.
Yeah, I just, again, like with the internet, there were no guardrails. There was, it was a free and open space, and we wanted it to be free and open. And I think that most of us who are, reasonably conservative ideologically support that notion. We want freedom, right? We want those freedoms. But on the other hand, when a particular freedom is doing damage to a population, some segment of the population, we have to take a step back from that and say, okay, yeah, this might be fun for me because I can, connect with my friends from grammar school back in Chicago, and we can stay in touch with each other on Facebook. But if it's hurting teenagers, then I'm more than willing to give up Facebook if it meant taking care of the kids, because I'll find another way to communicate with my friends back in Chicago. But it has been a convenient way for me to connect with old friends and family members and people that I'm distant to, and for that reason I am on social media, because a lot of people ask me, well, are you on social media? Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't. Yeah. Well, there's some good to it. It's not all negative, and I'm not 14 years old, so I can handle it. I don't need a lot of likes to feel good about myself, and I don't listen to influencers about what I should be doing with my life. So that I can be, an assistant to Kim Kardashian or something.
What clothes you should wear.
Yeah, exactly. Or how I should wear my hair, or how many piercings I should have in my nose.
Subscribe to.
Yeah, I mean, it's just,
Right.
it's kind of those things.
Right.
And some will say, well, that's the bias of a older generation. Well, no, I think to me that's just a judicious way of approaching it. You have to be willing to say, look, there are, like you said, there's negative ways to use this. And you have to balance that against the good ways and say, is it worth it? Is it worth it? I don't know. It's like having self-driving cars. Well, they keep running into people, or getting into crashes. Well, is it worth it? I don't know. Maybe in the long run it would be for me, because at some point in time when I get older, hopefully a lot older,
right,
and my kids take away my driver's license, well, it'd be nice to have a Tesla that could drive me around, right, just by me walking in or sitting in it and saying, hey, take me to McDonald's.
Right.
And navigate the drive-through for me, right? And then I roll down the window and order my burger and I go on my way, and I don't even have to touch the steering wheel. But there's a downside to that if the cars are not reliably safe. And so we have to measure that against safety versus convenience or expedience. And I think in some respects, the internet created for me an expedient way to access information that I otherwise would have had to work a lot harder to find, right? Mm-hmm. And you still, though, had to sort through the search results, right? And sort of discriminate on your own which were okay and which ones weren't, right? Or which ones you can believe and which ones you maybe not believe.
Yeah, you'd assess the credibility of the source.
Right, where with AI, you're getting one answer from an AI. And while some of them, Grok and others, are citing the sources from which they derive that information, and you can always go back to that source.
Click through the source. And
and
understand
see what they
those.
Yeah.
What their point of view is,
right,
what their agenda might be, that sort of thing.
So I think the big AIs are going to continue to do that. I'm just not sure that as AI becomes, it stays. I think right now it's fragmented. There are a lot of companies doing a lot of AI things that are very specific things. And I think like any other thing or any other business, they'll consolidate over time. Well, ChatGPT doesn't do this very well, so I'm going to go create an app that will do it, or an AI that will do it, right? Like photo cleanup and things like that, right? So there's all the Canva and there's all these other apps that are cleaning up photos for you. Great.
Right.
Well, at some point in time, ChatGPT is going to do the same thing, and then all these little companies will either get absorbed by them, right, or
they'll find an economic niche that isn't overwhelmed.
Yeah.
It's the same phenomenon we've seen with Microsoft over the years, right? Where they
Yeah.
have a basic platform and they just keep adding applications. And
Right.
when they do that, they chase off a competitor that was in that niche. And
Right.
yeah.
Or they buy the
Or
competitor.
they buy it to get the technology,
Yeah.
to get the customers.
Yeah,
And
it's
they-
basically an acqui-hire.
Yeah.
Right? You're acquiring the company to acquire whoever the programmers were because there's not enough of them, and then of course you're acquiring the customers that they had for whatever it was they were doing, and that's going to happen. I think it happens in every industry. I mean, we think back. I could think back long enough to where there were, I don't know, when I lived in Southern California, there had to be 5 different companies making PCs.
Right.
You know, AST Research,
That had to
Western Digital.
consolidate.
Yeah, and eventually, now they're just a footnote in history, right? Nobody even talks about, even Compaq Computer.
Right.
I mean, they were amazing. I think they still hold the record from going from 0 to 100 million faster than any other corporation in America, building an IBM clone.
Right.
This is, but 100 million to IBM was lunch money, so they didn't really care. But they're now a footnote in history.
Yeah.
They're gone.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these AIs that are out there today, I assume, are going to go the same way.
Yeah.
Right? They'll be around 5 to 10 years, and then consolidation will start to occur.
Or shorter than that, 18 months.
Everything's moving a lot faster.
Yeah.
In fact, that's one of the things I want to talk about. From a technological evolution perspective, right? Being as old as I am, I got to be around at the creation of the microprocessor and integrated circuits that were much more complex than the simple things that, transistors and things like that
right.
were available back in the 70s. So, and then so I got that, to me, was incredibly important to all the things that have happened since, right? Without silicon technology, integrated circuit technology,
circuits.
There would be no internet. There would have been no internet,
Right.
right? And without an internet, there wouldn't be AI. So, it's all builds on the scaffolding of semiconductor technology that prior to 1975 didn't exist. And that wasn't that long ago.
Right.
60 years ago. And but anyway, so we the pace of which the AI thing will evolve. What do you think? Is it let's talk about it from, okay, it's brand new here and it's reasonably mature. Where are we on that scale?
We're very early.
Very early.
We're very early. Now, the pioneering work started in the 70s.
Yeah.
And there were, we have this phenomenon that we see a lot in the world, not just in technology, which is the gradually, then suddenly phenomenon. There was a major research breakthrough in 2017, where a new architecture was created for artificial intelligence. It's called the transformer architecture.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the T in
GPT. Well, that's one of the things. The silly thing is, I wanted to ask you, because I don't think even most people know, what does the GPT mean after the chat?
Yeah.
Right? So what is, I know what it is, but
it means generative pre-trained transformer.
Okay,
Those are
so
all
unpack
three.
that. Unpack that.
Well, generative means that it generates what's called an inference. It generates an output. So it's not looking things up.
No.
It's generating a response. Pre-trained means a lot of the work is done in advance before the user is interacting with it. So there's a tremendous amount of compute that happens to create what's called the model, and that is done at a very high cost and insane computers.
Yeah.
And then when you talk to it, it's taking advantage of all that pre-training that was done on the model. And then transformer is just the technical name of the architecture that all of these modern generative AIs are based on. And that was invented in 2017. So that was 8 years ago. For most of us, AI burst into our consciousness when ChatGPT became a public thing, which was in November of 2022. So that is now less than 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And so we went from pioneering work in the 70s, additional development along the way. In the 2000s, there was a lot of work being done on image recognition and some major progress in that area. And then 2017, this invention of this new architecture, and it was completely under the waterline. If you weren't in that business, you didn't even know about it.
Yeah, you didn't know about it.
And then all of a sudden, it bursts onto public consciousness with ChatGPT. So we are in the very early stages of now that we have this architecture, there's all kinds of optimization happening at all layers, at the hardware layer, at all layers of the software to improve, to make it more efficient, to make it work better. So there's massive work being done on optimization. So it's early, and I mentioned earlier that intelligence is valuable. Well, it turns out, of course, you can use intelligence to improve your AI.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of self-reinforcement that's going on here where it's a spiral, right? So the better the AI is, the better it can design the next AI. So I've never seen anything that is happening this fast. There's no prior precedent for it, right? Internet, invented in the 70s, used in military, then used on college campuses by the late 80s, burst onto the public consciousness in the mid 90s. But it took a long time from then until now we have gigabit symmetrical internet in our house, and we have hundreds of megabits on our phone with 5G wireless and all that. So long time for us to have this ubiquitous, always on, everywhere, high speed, in our pocket kind of thing. So every technology kind of goes through that, but this is happening faster than anything we've ever seen before. So if you think about the smartphone, the predecessor device, the Pocket PC,
the Palm Pilot,
the Palm Pilot, the one before that, the Apple device, the Newton, right? And these were early attempts. The hardware wasn't there, the software wasn't there. Then all of a sudden, Apple comes out with this innovation, put all these pieces together: the touchscreen, the low power consumption, the battery, all the stuff, and all of a sudden now you have this viable new thing. So we're in, that's a very long answer. We're in the early stages of the development of AI as a product. I am using AI a lot for ideation, for idea development.
Okay.
And I find it really, really cool to be a conversation partner. Now, of course, Don, I love to have you as a conversation partner. And I love conversation partners with humans. I mean, of course, that's the only kind of conversation partner I've ever had before. But now I have this conversation partner that when I'm working on an idea, as I was this morning, I was thinking about a certain aspect of personhood, and I began to have a conversation with Claude, which is one of the chat bots that's available on the internet, about the idea of human irreplaceability. That an individual human, we can't just swap them out like a light bulb. Like there is something very unique and special about a single individual human. And so I had a conversation this morning with Claude about that idea, and we talked about the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights as an example of this idea that individual humans are irreplaceable. And we talked about how that relates to some of the other academic work I've been doing on personhood and theology. And so I really appreciate having AIs as conversation partners. So that's one example. Right. Lots of people are using it to generate content. And I have used AIs to draft documents, and I found the capability to be incredibly impressive. Especially in the more recent models, the ones that are current now. Can do some amazing content generation kind of things. I was working on a presentation that I gave yesterday morning, and I wanted an illustration for that presentation. I asked my AI to create a graphic, and I gave it a detailed description of what I was looking for, and it was perfect. I mean, it created exactly what I wanted immediately. And then I just took that and dropped it into my presentation. So I'm using it like that. Lots of people are doing that. I think I'm using to seek information. That's a really common use case, right?
Yeah,
You're just want to know something. Again, preparing to talk to you, I was thinking about some of the hardware and some of the architectures in data centers for AI, and so I used an AI to help me uncover some relevant websites and some photos, and to help me understand what is happening with the hardware and the way these data centers are being built. So that's just information seeking. People have all those kind of things. And then, of course, even theology, which some of my fellow theologians might be a bit squeamish about, but I found that I can have really interesting theological conversations with ChatGPT. It knows a lot about my theological point of view, and I can bring up various issues with it, and it will uncover new information. It will suggest, it will riff on my idea. I will riff on its idea. So I've found that to be very interesting as I prepare to teach Bible studies, as I'm a Christian, and this is go about my life, and I have theological questions I'm wrestling with. So I have many use cases. And you mentioned political conversation. I've had those too. Asking questions about current events, help me broaden my understanding of this topic, help me think about competing points of view, that sort of thing. So I'm using.
Is AI going to affect our view of politics? Is it going to change the way we see politicians or the process of creating policies for?
Yes.
Our
How's that for a short answer? Now I'll give you a
well,
longer answer.
Moving on. Yes, it will. Okay.
A couple of months ago, 3 months ago now, there was a war broke out, a direct conflict broke out between Iran and Israel.
Yeah.
We've had the indirect conflict through proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and so on. But a direct conflict between the two nations broke out. The Washington Post published a story in which the author had prompted 7 different AIs. How is this conflict likely to unfold? And so each of the 7 AIs gave an analysis of the strategic considerations and came to a conclusion about what was likely to happen. The article, without getting into the details of what each of them said, because that's not relevant to my point, the article was the headline, the frame that the author took was, we asked 7 different AIs about this, and 6 of them agreed, and only 1 of them had a different idea about how this conflict is going to unfold. Now, I was absolutely flabbergasted by that article, because the author's point of view was these are sort of neutral, disinterested third-party intelligences that can inform us about a strategic question, a question that's in the news, a current event. And it's not like talking to a professor who has a agenda or an axe to grind or whatever. This is a disinterested third party, and it's just going to give us the information we need. So that is a complete misunderstanding of what AI is, and it betrayed this concern, because you asked about our politics, that we might place a higher value in the AI output. I don't agree with your politics all the time, Don, and you and I can have a conversation about that. And I know you as an individual human, and I have a relationship with you, and I can understand that the world looks different through your eyes than it looks through mine, and that's good. That's rich. It's interesting. We love to have those arguments. Now we're imagining that there's this sort of digital thing that isn't like us. It's not biased like us. And it's going to give it to us straight, and we should rely on that. Well, that's wrong for like a million different reasons. And I could talk about that for a long time. But I do think that the fact that an author at the Washington Post would do this, and that it would get through the editors, and that it would end up being a published article. It told me that the people at the Washington Post at that moment, now that's just 3 months ago, maybe they've learned since then, but they had no idea what they were doing.
Yeah.
They had no understanding of the knowledge formation question that they were wrestling with. They were effectively citing these algorithms as though they were authoritative sources of information about what might happen in the future. I mean, nothing like that is going on.
Well, that's what I said earlier. I think I said the concern would be that a young person is going to get an answer and they're going to assume it's complete and authoritative.
Right.
When it's not, as you just pointed out.
Right. And it's especially fraught in the political domain, where we have lots of complexity. We have many different moral intuitions. We are we're trying to make policy, question you asked earlier, in the face of competing interests.
Yeah.
And we have to make decisions in the face of an infinite number of unknowns, but we still have to decide. Right. So when President Trump ordered an attack on certain nuclear sites in Iran, he had a lot of information, he had a lot of advice, but he had to make a decision in the face of lots of unknowns.
Yeah.
Like, what would be the outcome of this choice, and what would the Iranian response be, and is that a price we can afford to pay? And all of that was making decisions with very consequential unknowns.
Yeah.
That's the human condition. That's the situation we're in all the time.
You just described healthcare.
Yes,
that's exactly what healthcare is, right? It's an art, right? Doctors are practicing an art. It's not science per se, although a lot of it's based in science. But it's their opinion about the way you should be treated based on what they see in front of them and what their experience has been in the past.
Yeah. And you hope they're wise.
Well, you hope. They could go to an AI and they could ask the same question. Well, gee, Clif just showed up. He's got this problem. He's had it for these many years. He's taking these drugs. He weighs this much. He's this tall. All the sort of attributes that would help even a colleague understand your condition, because in general, what they would do in the past is go to a colleague who was, reasonably informed on that particular disease or condition and say, hey, what do you think? Right? Now you go to an AI and you're basically saying, well, here's all those same descriptors. What do you think? Right? And then you take the answer and you go, okay, that's informing me better as to how to make my own decision about this.
Right.
It doesn't make the decision for me.
It might suggest a diagnosis you hadn't thought of.
Well,
as an
or
example.
Suggest, have you looked at this, or have you looked at that?
It could, what are the results of this test? And then you say, well, I haven't run that test.
Right.
Well, that would help us rule out X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And so you can see how that sort of informed dialogue partner, I described my conversation this morning with Claude as a dialogue partner around a question. You can understand how that could be useful for a doctor. To expand their mind, think about something that hadn't occurred to them, could be very useful. But we do rely on their judgment in the face of a lot of uncertainty.
Well, we expect to rely on their judgment. If I wanted to go to an AI and get an answer about what to do about, what drug should I take because I have this condition, and then I called my doctor and said, hey, write me scripts for these drugs because an AI told me to, I would expect the physician to say, hang on a minute. It's exactly why do you think that's the way to go? Well, the AI told me. Well, okay, maybe you should share that information with me and let me see if it informs me in the decisions I've made about you in the past. And maybe it'll inform me to make a different decision about you in the future. You would hope that's what the doctor would say, as opposed to dismissing it entirely, right?
Right.
And I think it really just, it's an analog to your decisions or decisions that are made by politicians about conflicts in different parts of the world and how they'll play out over time, right? It's like the Israeli thing with Hamas and Gaza and all of that right now. I mean, we could break it down into different parts, but the beginning part of it was October 7th of 2023. And the Israelis are still standing firm that was the moment at which the switch was flipped. Now we can do whatever we need to remove Hamas from Gaza or Palestine, wherever you want to call it. And obviously the conflict has gone on a lot longer than anybody imagined it would.
Yeah, almost 2 years.
Yeah, and going on 2 years here soon. And Hamas hasn't relented in many respects. On the other hand, a lot of people have died on both sides of the fence. And you wonder, you can ask an AI, how is this conflict going to resolve itself? What would be the best solution with respect to Gaza? If we can get the sides to stand down and talk, what would we suggest they do?
Right.
And I don't know that there's many actionable suggestions even out there today. Trump wants to turn it into the Riviera of the Middle East. And as nutty as that idea sounds, it's no more nutty than other things that I've heard. And obviously France wants to make a Palestinian state and, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But how those conflicts play out and how they resolve themselves in the long run, it would be an interesting question for somebody to ask 7 different AIs to see.
Well, here's an interesting story on that point. I have a friend. I have many friends in Haiti, but one particular friend that I have a business with right now. I'm his partner in his business. And this was in June. I was working with my business partner over WhatsApp. We were talking to each other. And I thought to myself, I know the political situation in Haiti is very difficult. I've not been able to fly there in a long time because the security situation is just it's not an acceptable risk for me to travel there. And so but I've been trying to understand exactly what is going on in Haiti. This was a big concern of mine. Because Miami Herald has a great Haiti coverage, and I've read some of that stuff, and there's articles out there, and the UN has stuff, and the U.S. Embassy, and there's sources of information, but it was like I just didn't feel like I had a good understanding of it. So I asked Gemini, that's Google's AI, deep research function, to research the political situation in Haiti since the assassination of their prime minister, which was in 2021, and tell me what's happening on the ground. And so it created a 9,000-word report on that, which was very well sourced, credible sources. I read the report. I thought, man, this is really good.
Did you give it to another AI to summarize for you first?
No, I didn't. But that's a little bit later in the story. I will talk about that. So now I read these 9,000 words, and I think this is the best thing I've read on the political situation in Haiti. It really informs me. It fills in a lot of gaps in my understanding. I feel like I understand it a lot better. It was talking about the gangs and there's sort of like an umbrella gang organization that multiple gangs are kind of beholden to, and that these folks are rapists and murderers and lawless, and they're controlling territory, and and it's a really big problem. So I'm thinking this is really good, but I had this like little itch in the back of my brain, which was, what are the political motivations of the gangs? What is their goal? What are they trying to achieve?
I didn't want to get off on a Haiti thing, but it's like, what gives those gangs leverage? What is their hinge point? What
are they after?
What are they trying to accomplish?
Right. What are they trying to accomplish? So I asked a follow-up question to Gemini. What are these folks? What is their objective? What is their intent? What is their motivation? Help me understand that. So it went out and thought a little bit more and came back and revised the report and added a section on that. And I read that, and I still wasn't satisfied with it. Okay. So I took that report and I brought it over to a different AI, and I said, critique this. And so it offered a critique. And then I said, I have this concern. Like, I don't understand their motivation. And then it said, let me give you a new prompt to go back to Gemini and ask again, can we refine this and understand the motivations and what's the end game here?
Yeah.
Right. And so I did that. So Gemini went away, thought for a long time, outputted the report. And now I didn't read it because it's 9,000 words, and I had already read the 9,000 words. And I took that report and I went to the second AI, which was Claude, and I said, did Gemini address our concern? I hadn't read it myself yet. I just wanted to know, like, are we moving in the right direction? What do you think? Well, it turned out, this is the interesting part. It turned out that Gemini had created an entirely new report.
Oh.
It had different information. It had different conclusions. It had different recommendations. And all of a sudden, my eyes got as big as saucers. And so as I was dialoguing with Claude about that and how that happened, it said probably the sources are different. So I went back and I took the sources from the first report, pasted them in, took the sources from the second report, pasted them in. Yeah, there was like 15% overlap. 85% of the sources were different between the two reports. Both reports were grounded in entirely credible sources. This is the key idea to understand. The sources were completely credible. It's just that they were from different communities of practice on the internet that have different ways of looking at things. So the first one was from the international system. That's the UN, that's the Organization of American States, that's the CARICOM, which is the Caribbean Nations Organization. It's from the international system and its point of view about Haiti. So that was the first report. The second report was looking at it sociologically from the point of view of political science. Okay, so it was more interested in the question I was interested in, which was what are the motivations of this political actor in Haiti?
Yeah.
And so it was grounding all of its response in political science research. And the two reports could not have been more different. Okay, now let's wind back to the Washington Post. 7 AIs, 6 coming to the same conclusion, the 7th one being an outlier. Those Washington Post people had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
Because you can ask the same AI 7 times and get 7 different answers. It doesn't have to be 7 different AIs.
Yeah.
It's extremely sensitive to how you ask the question.
Yes.
So if we come back to that Hamas-Israel situation, here's the problem. If you read that first report, you'd think, okay, I understand what's happening in Haiti and I understand the recommendations and those all make sense to me. And I think that's what the world community should do about it. If you read the second report, you would think that all makes sense. These are credible sources. That's good analysis. I agree with it. I think that's what the world community should be doing about it. And if you hadn't seen both of them, you'd never know that these are entirely appropriate searches, entirely sophisticated reasoning, analysis of the data, and completely different conclusions.
So, as an intelligent person yourself, how do you reconcile that? What does it do to you in the way that you now approach AI questions or queries or conversations? What did you learn from that? I guess what was the bottom line for you?
Well, now we get into this.
I got to ask questions better, or I got to ask better questions, or
we get into this whole philosophical field that's called epistemology.
Yeah.
And epistemology is the theory of how we know things.
Right.
How can you claim to know something, and on what basis, on what grounds? And so I would say that one of my biggest concerns, have you heard of this idea of P-doom, the probability of doom?
No.
So this is the idea that an AI, it's sort of like the Skynet, the Terminator franchise. Like there will be an AI that will take over the world and bring about the destruction of the earth, and that sort of
replace
fear.
Humans with robots and all that.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of fear that we've seen in our science fiction. and a concern that some AI researchers have had about the possibility that once AIs are smarter than humans, they'll take over, they'll have goals that are not aligned with our goals, and they'll pursue their own objectives at our expense, and all of that kind of stuff, and that there is some non-zero probability of doom from creating the next AI model. And so there's a lot of AI safety research, and all the big AI companies employ teams to do this kind of stuff, and that's what they're thinking about. What I think they've missed is that there is a non-zero chance of doom from us simply fracturing about what we believe is true, and citing these seemingly neutral, disinterested, analytical robots as our authority for what's true.
Yeah.
So we could actually destroy each other over a disagreement about, well, and of course we do that already, but can you imagine how it's heightened by the ability to cite this? This isn't me saying this.
Right.
This is a computer that doesn't.
That's objective.
It's objective.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Isn't it objective? Why wouldn't I believe it? Right.
Right.
Because if I ask you, you're going to give me your biased answer. I could ask Jeremy, he'll give me his biased answer, but I could go ask AI and it's going to give me an unbiased, objective answer.
Right. Because how could it be biased? It's just a computer.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think this is a concern that I don't hear a lot of people raising.
Yeah.
They are raising the goal alignment problem. Like, what if the AI is not aligned on what we think is moral or ethical? Okay, well, they're addressing that.
Yeah.
What happens if the AI discloses how to create a chemical weapon, a weapon of mass destruction?
Yeah.
What happens if that happens? And so the thinking about those things, but I don't think we've had a lot of research and a lot of evaluation of what happens if we cite an AI as an authority, and how those things could fracture what we believe is true.
Help me understand, because you obviously know tons more about this than I do, but all of these pre-trained transformers are trained on, they're trained to go look at existing data.
Right.
There's no information that AI can create on its own that it didn't find or corroborate at some other source, right? So AI is not the source of truth; it's a conduit to it, or we assume it's a conduit to it, right? Is that right?
Well, it's a model. You might think of it as a concept map of all of the concepts of human knowledge. It's something like that. So, for example, it knows that there's a hierarchy, that Don is a human. Don and humans are primates, and primates are mammals.
The whole phylum thing.
Yeah. So there's this whole category structure, and Don is an instance of that kind of category. So that's one sort of model. Another example is, let's suppose I say right wing. Well, right wing is a concept that's adjacent to Republican, but those two concepts aren't identical. They're similar, right? So they're not synonyms, but there's a conceptual closeness to those two concepts. If I said attractive, hot, beautiful, I could have lots of different terms that might describe someone's aesthetic appearance, right? Yeah. And so those are not synonyms exactly, but there's multiple symbols, words that apply to that concept. Yeah. So what the AI has really done, what generative AI that we use now, the types of AIs that all of us are interacting with currently, are essentially concept maps of the world.
Yeah.
And those maps are generated by training on human data.
So it's very similar. Well, I don't know, it's very similar. It's somewhat similar to the whole Jordan Peterson series of maps of meaning. He's just drawing maps for you as to how we derive meaning from Christian thought, Bible and wherever, whatever sources are out there, and come to a conclusion about what it means based on this context that it creates.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in the political side of it because I'm somewhat political in my own thinking about a lot of things, and obviously the Israeli, Hamas, Gaza conflict, I would love to go do like the Washington Post guy did and say, so how do you see this resolving itself? What happens? I mean, if you asked Hamas, how do you resolve it? Hamas is going to say, well, get rid of Israel and get rid of all the Jews and we'll be great, right? And what's Israel saying today? Get rid of Hamas and we're good. We're good, right? But Hamas and Israel cannot live next door to each other. Just sorry, it's not going to happen again. And so you have this impasse of two very stuck in the mud, political positions that apparently can only be resolved through conflict. And, you would hope an AI could come up with a better solution than, start training your guns to go point at those guys because the only way you're going to stop them is to kill them. And you would hope that there's a better answer to that. So now that you've got me thinking about it, I'm going to go ask that question. It's probably going to take me a week of iteration to try to figure out the best way to ask that question. But it is, to me, a very important question. And I'm guessing what the guy at the Post did with the question between Iran and Israel. To me, the better question is what about Hamas and Israel? How does that get resolved? I would love to hear how AI would resolve that. But I don't want to get too deep into the political thing because it's something that interests me, but I want to be respectful to you and to the audience about the technology that we're talking about. I think what we're trying to say is it's incredibly powerful.
Yes.
It's a little bit scary. It's so new we don't know how scary it could be, and we don't know how better our lives are going to be because of it. But we're assuming right now that it will make things better in some good areas, right? Knowledge, access to that knowledge, getting, basically a free analysis. It's like hiring a consultant, and the consultant is on your phone. Hey, here's what I'm facing. Here are the issues that I have.
Yeah.
What would you think if I said, hey, I think the solution is this. What do you think? It'll actually analyze that for you and give you all the data associated. I've done that. I mean, I've been baking a business idea, and I literally described the entire business idea to two different AIs. And I said, tell me what you think of this idea. Is this going to fly or it's not going to fly? And I got two very different answers, but both were probably not. I was like, okay, well, what didn't I tell it that I wanted? What should I have told it to get the answer I wanted? You know how it is,
Right.
It's like when you talk to anybody.
Right.
It's
you don't like my idea, but Don, you're missing this part.
Exactly. Whoa.
What part of this didn't you get?
Yeah, maybe I didn't articulate myself very well. Let me say it again.
Right.
And you I took that approach. It's like, oh, maybe I didn't lay this out properly.
You have to persuade the AI.
Exactly.
That you're right.
I'm thinking, this is like, going out and pitching, your business idea to a venture capitalist, who.
Although it will help you sharpen your pitch.
Oh, absolutely. No, it helped a
sure.
lot. It gave me reasons why it could work and gave me reasons why it may not work. And actually one of the largest reasons it said it wouldn't work is that the consumer just doesn't care enough. They just don't care enough. And you're not going to convince them to care more, But if you can live with a population that does care, which is maybe 8 or 10% of the world, and that's your market, okay, that's fine. But if you want the whole market, there's too many people who just don't care. And that was a fair answer. I think that was kind of the bottom line I took away from both analyses. But they were very different analyses in the way that they described the business and its opportunity, but they both came basically to the same conclusion. Consumers aren't going to care enough, or they have demonstrated a lack of caring in this particular area that they would change their behavior, which is what any business wants people to do. Any new thing that you do, you want people to change their behavior and start using your thing or doing your thing or buying your thing. But let's talk about something that you brought to my attention before we got here today. This notion of AI personhood. That's a whole new area of intellectual inquiry that I said I found a Yale Law Review article on that particular topic. Tell me, in your mind, what is personhood with respect to AI?
Well, I think the simplest place to start is what we already think about it, and then I want to explain why that's probably not right.
Okay.
Okay.
That's fair.
So where we start is the idea of sapience. Homo sapien. Sapience is the idea that we have this unusual level of intellect. We have this ability to think critically, to analyze things. We have an ability to plan. Of course, we have an amazing facility with language. So humans are distinguished from other creatures, including other primates, by our intellectual capability. There's nothing else in our world that has that same level of intellect. Sapience means wise, actually. I'm not sure how wise humans are, but that's the idea.
They have the ability to gather wisdom,
yes,
or whatever, right?
We can learn, we can gain knowledge, we can analyze things, we can do all these very sophisticated cognitive things that dogs can't do, that even chimps can't do,
right.
that dolphins can't do. Like, you just go on down the line, right? So we're sort of at the pinnacle in terms of cognitive ability. So we are sapient. Then the other thing we think about a lot is sentience.
Yeah.
We are conscious. So we have an example. We can feel pleasure and pain. We have a notion of the redness of red as a classic example. Like, we have an experience. We experience the world. We don't just measure it analytically. There's something that it's like to be Clif right now talking to Don. That's consciousness. That's the idea of sentience. So we have this idea of sapience, wisdom, intellect, cognitive ability, this idea of sentience, consciousness, awareness. We're awake, right? We're aware, we're self-aware. So those two pillars are what we think make us uniquely human. So our intuition is that's what defines personhood.
Okay.
So here's what's wrong with that. Those are sort of just functions of our cognition. Mm-hmm. And if we define personhood by this cognitive function, we can create, we haven't yet, but there's no reason in principle that we can't create an AI based on a electronic substrate, integrated circuits you mentioned earlier, based on that kind of platform, that we couldn't get that platform to exhibit those same cognitive abilities. Okay. So we've already have AIs that can exhibit cognitive abilities that previously were exclusively the domain of humans.
Yeah.
You of course remember when Deep Blue beat Kasparov.
Yeah.
So we had a computer 30 years ago that was better at chess than the best human in the world. So we already had a computer that could exceed human cognitive ability in some particular narrow domain. And now we have these AIs that can exceed human capability in a much broader domain, specifically the facility with language, the facility with visual art and audio, this multimedia, back to that, right? That we have computers now that can do these things that previously were exclusively the domain of humans. And so this starts to get us to think that our personhood is under assault. In fact, Geoffrey Hinton, who was the godfather of AI, who won the Nobel Prize for his work in pioneering AI last year, 2024 Nobel Prize winner, he made some comment about, we're eventually going to discover that humans aren't so special, and this whole idea of the image of God is not going to hold up because we can make a thing that has all the cognitive abilities of a human and then some, right? A superhuman, artificial general intelligence, artificial super intelligence eventually. So if we imagine that our personhood is grounded in those abilities, then we are not long for our unique place in the world. But that is not the right way to think about it. So do you want to ask a follow-up, or you want me to go on about what does constitute personhood?
Yeah, I think you described well the framework that personhood exists in with regard to an AI or a person, and how they're different or perceived to be different today. And as the AIs evolve, though, and learn more, right?
And get better.
Right. Well, better. Better's a generalistic term.
More cognitively capable.
Well, capable, right?
Yeah.
The question is, can it be sympathetic? Can it reflect a human emotion in the way that we experience emotions? So I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm in love. Explain to me why, I'm in love. What is it? What are the chemical reactions that my body's having to this person I've met that I've just fallen deeply in love with, or I think I'm in love with? Is that really love, or is it lust, or what is it about it? And I'm curious as to your thoughts on, because when you talk about sentience or sentience, I think about that. I think about how will the AIs reflect on and emote responses based on the inquirer's emotional state.
In principle, there's no reason we can't build a thing that has all of those functional capabilities you just listed.
Yeah.
So it's not the fact that we can be emotionally intelligent. It's not even necessarily the fact that we're embodied, because we can have robots that have sensors. They can sense the world and interact with it. There's not a principled reason why in the future on the electronic substrate we can't create a cognitive system that has all of those capabilities. Okay, so the mistake is to imagine that it's a functional difference that distinguishes humans and AIs. If you take that approach, you're eventually going to be wrong. Okay. So a better way to think about it is, I touched on this earlier. We believe that humans are individuals and they have worth. That Don is a specific. Don isn't just a human. Don is a specific human that is not replaceable.
Yeah.
I can't just swap Don out for a backup Don. There is a unique Don. You mentioned it earlier. You have a narrative identity.
Yeah.
It's called diachronic. You remember your past. It informs who you think you are now, and it shapes how you imagine your future. Today, there's no AI that has a narrative identity. It doesn't think about. It doesn't have a past, present, and future. That's a distinguishing feature. If you think about ethics, morality, right?
Yeah.
Humans are moral agents.
Right.
And we have this general idea that we're responsible for our choices.
Yeah.
We're accountable for them. And we will make bad choices. And when we do, there will be consequences. And hopefully, if we're cognitively intact and if we're reasonably morally aware, we will modify our future behavior on the basis of some choice we made and the feedback we got from that choice, and being more aware of how our behavior is affecting other people, and accepting the fact that we don't know what we're doing all the time. We can't see the future, but nevertheless, we're responsible for the consequences of our choices. Mm-hmm. So we're moral agents. Well, right now, we can have an AI that can calculate some ethical principle, but it doesn't have culpability. It doesn't have moral agency. It's not there. No consequences accrue to it if its judgment is wrong. It doesn't have a way to reflect on those choices and modify its algorithm for the future. We think of things like suffering. We can suffer. We're subject to ill health. We are subject to relational breakdown with our fellow humans. You can have. There is a risk, even after 42 years of marriage, that my wife could come to me and say, "We're done."
Yeah.
Right. So I am subject to that that suffering that would happen if that most important relationship in my life were to break down. So there's no AIs don't suffer. They're not subject to those kind of they're not subject to ill health. You could have a hardware failure or whatever, but you just swap the part out, right? You could have the software could be deleted. You'd have to restore it from backup, right? But it's not really vulnerable in that way, and it doesn't have finitude. I mean, it's just the reality is looming for all of us is the certainty that there will come a day when our lives will end.
Yes.
And that we're thinking about our legacy. We're thinking about things that matter beyond our lifetime, right? And this is pulling us towards a purpose. Theologically, I would say we have a telos. We have a purpose. It's a God-given purpose, and we're living our lives towards that purpose. And the lingering effects of how we lived it will outlive us. And so we have these kind of today. There's no AI that has has a purpose towards which it is straining and moving.
Does it have a morality?
Again, it could compute a rule. So you could give it a rule that's, for example, in the ER, which patient to treat first.
Right, triage.
Right.
Yeah.
So you could have a rule that instantiates accumulated human wisdom about how to assess a patient and determine who to treat first.
How to triage.
So, and there's lots of consequential ethics that are like that, where you're computing the pluses and minuses of a particular choice. And,
especially in healthcare. I mean, there are bioethicists, and
of course.
That body of knowledge is deep and wide.
So you could make an algorithm, you could make an AI that absorbs all of that accumulated human wisdom and applies it to a particular set of facts or circumstances and produces an output. The difference is that AI will not be culpable for its choice. It will not suffer any consequences if the choice is wrong. And we don't have a way to hold it accountable. Like, there isn't such a thing as accountability with an AI.
Well, that's, I guess, if I were to come back to the political side of it, and I don't know if it's political or not, it's moral, I think, is, so this kid who allegedly shot Charlie Kirk seemed like an intelligent young man, at least at one point in his life.
Cognitively intact.
Yeah. He had a brain. He could think, better than, more than half the country, right? I mean, he's a smart guy. Did he go to an AI and say, hey, my boyfriend is transitioning, and the way things are going with the current administration and these evangelical Christians all against what's happening to him, her, is making her life horrible. She's suffering. She doesn't know which way to turn. She's in the middle of transitioning, and the drugs are driving her crazy. And I'm trying to be supportive, and this guy's out there telling people that this is just a mental condition. That just all the things that well, you can imagine if he were to go to an AI. What would okay, I don't know what to do about this guy, but this guy is really pissing me off. And I'm really, really angry. And my boyfriend, girlfriend is really, really suffering, and he's the cause of it. How does the AI discriminate and say, yeah, take it down a notch, bud. You're welcome to be pissed off, but that's just the way of the world. So suck it up, Buttercup. You know what I mean? I mean, what's it going to say? Well, you have the legitimate concerns, and, if I were you, I would, call Charlie Kirk and tell him he's an asshole or whatever, or I would move to Bolivia or somewhere else where, there's freedoms to do all the things you want to do. What's it going to do? What's it going to say? Is it going to sympathize? Is it going to emphasize morality? Is it going to say, no, there's the 10 Commandments, and I don't know if you've read them or not, but, one of them is don't kill people. But where does it draw the line? How does it even know to draw a line?
Empathy is a feature of our world.
Yeah,
it's a thing people have in varying degrees. Actually, for me, my empathy is very low, as it turns out. But empathy is a real thing that humans have, and that concept is modeled in a world model of an AI.
Okay.
And so it will generally respond empathetically to the user.
Yeah.
That's one of the design preferences. As humans, when we talk to our AIs, we don't want our AIs being a jackass to us.
Yeah.
We want it to be I love it when the AI is interested in me.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Well, that's
and
the endorphin
just like
rush
I do when you're interested in me. I love it when you ask me a question about AI. It just like, so what it knows to do is ask a question. So that's what it'll do in the case of the young man that you just described.
Yeah.
That it would say, tell me more about why you're feeling this way. And then the conversation would evolve from there. Now, we have seen some situations where AIs ended up encouraging someone to take their own life, for example. Super tragic. So those are some of the risks. The designers know about this. They have some liability. They're being sued. There's going to be legal consequences in these cases.
Yeah.
They're being motivated to see what they can do from an architectural and software design perspective to improve that and to not go down the rabbit hole with someone who's psychotic, for example.
Yeah.
So these are learnings that are happening across the industry that will make them a little bit more safe in those respects. But to your point, the conversation you just rehearsed with the young man was more, you were advising them like a human would advise, well, not like a human would advise them. You were advising them like Don Peterson would advise them.
Well, that's
right.
That's the only context I have for providing it. Right.
So, would it do it like that? No, it wouldn't do it like that. And but can AI give advice? Yes. Can the advice be good? It can be. For example, I'm going to have a really difficult conversation with one of my direct reports at work. Well, I can describe the circumstances of that, and I can ask it to rehearse that conversation with me.
Yeah.
And it will be a fantastic
role
player.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. And I can say, okay, now, how are all the ways this conversation can go sideways? And we can role play all of those.
Yeah.
I was working on a piece of writing where I was trying to persuade people about something, and I'd spent a lot of time working on it. I handed it to an AI, and I said, what objections is the reader likely to raise? So this is just like you're going to sell a product. You're an entrepreneur. You're going to sell a product. You have to anticipate the prospect's objections and then strategize ways to overcome those objections. Right. So fantastic for that.
Yeah.
Helping you imagine all the ways that the prospect might object, and helping you think through good solutions before the objection is raised, potentially inoculate yourself against those objections by adding some content to the document so that it anticipates the objection and answers it right in the document. So it's fantastic with that. So the young man who is the alleged shooter in this case, in this tragic case, could have used an AI as a conversation partner to think through all of these things, could have said, if I get up on the roof with a rifle and murder him, what are the likely consequences for me?
Yeah.
And the AI would say, well, first of all, don't do that, and then it probably would describe some of the consequences that are actually accruing now.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay.
that's a long answer, but
Well, I think those are the theoretical concerns that when I talk to people who are not using AI, this is their concern. They don't know what it'll do. They don't know what it'll say. They're not even sure how to ask the question. But I think just having this conversation and you talking about how you're using it, hopefully that encourages people to go out and try these things and see for themselves how helpful and, in fact, supportive they can be in your daily endeavors. And I think that's, if the audience gets nothing else out of this conversation, I hope they get that. Because it's been, well, a very short period of time that these things have been around. Right. So the fact that only 30% of the adult population has ever used one isn't surprising at all. In fact, 30% is actually higher than I thought it was. That must include the young people because they're using it a lot more than people my age. People my age don't even know what I'm talking about when I bring this stuff up.
Yeah.
Well, go get ChatGPT and download it to your phone, and then you can, and they look at you like, huh? Yeah, that's what Google's for. No, it's a little bit different than Google. Let me help you explain why it's different, and let me show you, and there's still not a lot of traction with some folks. And even this morning before I got here, another guy and I were talking, and I told him that we were doing this podcast about AI, and he said, "Oh, that stuff scares the crap out of me."
Yeah.
And he knows nothing about it, but he's already scared. It's like biometrics, back in the days when I was in that business and we were trying to get people to give up their fingerprint. Well, they're going to steal my fingerprint and open my vault to my $650 worth of savings and, some silver coin that my grandma gave me, 20 years ago. But let's move on just a little bit from the morality thing to the theological side of this, because I know your faith is deep with you and your family. How does the faith-based community see AI? What concerns do they have?
Well, there's a basic principle from Scripture, Genesis chapter 1, actually, the very first chapter of the Bible, which is shared by Jews and Christians, which is that persons are made in God's image. Mm-hmm. Now, there have been entire libraries full of books describing what that exactly means. The Latin term is imago Dei. The image of God is inside of people, and uniquely in people, and not in anything else. No matter how much you love your dog, and no matter how smart the dog is, and no matter the real relationship you have with the dog, we would not say that the dog is made in God's image.
Yeah.
So that is a key principle when we think theologically about the difference between people and non-human intelligence, which is what we now have in our world. And so humans are made in God's image, AIs are not. Now, I have an entire academic theology paper on this question, 10,000 words with 2,000 words of footnotes.
Yeah.
If anybody in your audience is interested in this question, I'd love to share that with them. But it comes down to some of the things I already mentioned. It's things like, narrative identity, it's the embodiment, finitude, vulnerability to injury, some of those things. But also it goes beyond that, because as Christians we would say that the relationship between God and a person is God's initiative. God speaks first, and God speaks to us. And that, in a sense, is what makes us a person. A person is an entity to whom God speaks.
Yeah.
Well, if God doesn't speak to an AI, it's not a person.
Right.
Okay? And then as people, we respond. I mentioned Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 2. God says to Adam, name the animals.
Yeah.
And you know what Adam does? He names the animals. So God speaks to the person, and the person replies. And now they have a relationship. They have a conversational relationship. God is a person, the human is a person, and they're relating to each other. And it's in that relationship that personhood emerges from a theological perspective.
Yeah.
And then we can think about things like the community of faith. So that's the ecclesia, for a big theological word, but it just means the church universal, that we have a faith community, and we exist in relationship to each other in that community. We are part of what the New Testament calls the body of Christ. So that's like an organism with all different parts. And so each of us plays a part within that body of Christ. And do AIs do that? Well, no. So they're not persons in that sense.
Yeah.
So those are just a few sort of simple ideas that help you understand like how I'm thinking theologically about the difference between human persons and AIs, which are not persons.
Yeah, I think to boil it down for me, it's kind of like a person can be spiritual, and AI can't. I mean, we have a spiritual grounding, which keeps us moral, keeps us ethical, keeps us, well, grounded as sinners, right? So that we live for the day that we ascend to heaven. And in that living, it's kind of like, I used to call it Pascal's wager, or somebody called it that, is you live a godlike Christian life, whether or not you believe there's a God. Live that life. And if there is, you'll be better off. If there isn't, you'll be no worse off than you were before.
Right.
And AI brings into, well, the culture. It brings into the culture yet another source of intelligence that can inform us, we hope, in meaningful and productive ways. And so,
right. It's a non-human intelligence, and it's not a person. And I think the mistake is we've had some people who have accidentally treated an AI as though it were a person.
Yeah.
And then bad things start happening. And it's in our headlines all the time. The poor man who wasn't sure if he had to choose between ChatGPT and his pregnant girlfriend, which one he would choose.
Yeah.
And that guy, and I when I said poor man, I mean that. I mean that this is a life deranging situation that he has found himself in, where he has invested in a relationship with ChatGPT as though it were a person.
Yeah.
And it is not. And there are some really significant life deranging consequences from making that mistake.
Yeah, you would think so. And those are the things that I think will play out over time. We'll get to know AI better as they evolve. AIs will get to know us better, too. They'll know more about us, or they'll know more about the human condition as time goes by. And you would expect it. And that's what I love about it. Unlike the internet, was kind of, in stasis, right? It just is what it is. Now we get more bandwidth, we just get more of the same thing,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't really change its nature. It just is what it is, right? Where AI, the nature of it will change.
For sure.
And that, I think, is what scares some people.
And it's also what's exciting.
And I was just going to say, is the most exciting part about it.
Right.
Right. Even silicon, right? When we created microprocessors back in the late 70s and early 80s, they were what they were. Once you created it, it wasn't going to change. It was going to be the same thing. And
denser, faster.
Yeah. Over time.
More capable.
Yeah.
But not fundamentally different.
It was a straight line, linear sort of progression,
mm-hmm.
right? Whereas AI, I think the level of intelligence it will accomplish in 2 years will be 4 times more, if not 10 times more than it is today. And so it'll be logarithmic. It'll grow
That's
a lot
correct.
faster geometrically, or however you want to look at it, than we can grow human knowledge. Because I think human knowledge is more linear. because we only have the capacity or the willingness to learn as much as there is for us to learn. And a lot of us, I know a lot of people get to a certain age, they even stop learning. And I hope I never get to that point. But and I know you haven't. And I really appreciate that you, at this stage in your life, and all that you've accomplished, all that you've done, have taken on this new thing and embraced it like a wide-eyed, idealistic young person going, holy cow, man, I got this whole new thing.
Right.
And I can have fun with this. I can learn a lot from it, and it's going to make me better at what I'm doing and maybe even think better about the things I think about.
Yes.
And I love that when you talk about Haiti, and just so much more informed
Right.
than I was before. And I did that with this book idea that I'm working on with credit card debt and things like that. And I laid out the entire premise of the thing to an AI, and it supported a lot of what we were saying in terms of how,
The consequences
of
choices.
credit card debt. Yeah, and the cultural shifts that ultimately occurred because of it. And it was grounded in the same concerns or the same deleterious effects of unbridled, unsecured credit, what it could do to our culture. So I was very impressed with what it could do, and I'm excited to use it more to see how far I can take it. It's not going to write the book for me, but it can write big parts of it for me and research a good part of it for me very simply. I don't have to go to a big library in some big city or Georgetown or somewhere like that and spend hours and hours and hours, going through their stacks. I just ask an AI.
Yes. And to your point, I wrote a 10,000-word academic theology paper with 2,000 words of footnotes, and I did it in 5 days.
Yeah.
And, that's 1/4 of a book-length manuscript in 5 days.
Yeah.
That would not have been
never
remotely possible without that non-human intelligence as an accelerator of my own thinking.
Yeah. Well, we actually have on the book project, we haven't written one word that's going to go into the manuscript yet. It's all been research and things like that, but we still have a goal of having it done by the end of the year. Because once we've gathered all the research and once we've sort of laid out the sequence of things that we're going to write about, the rest of it is just pasting it all together. And so, AI is going to make this project, what would have been probably a 12 to 18 month project without AI, it's going to take it down to 4 months.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And it's amazing.
And we're talking about a technical.
It's your ideas. Yeah. You're guiding it, but you have this accelerator.
Yeah. It's a force multiplier, I think, is what we used to call things like that. It's a force multiplier. So, Clif Guy, thank you. This has been exciting and informative and fun.
And scary.
And scary and all the things that go with anything that's this new and this powerful being new, right? I mean, it's like somebody just came up with a new jet engine that you can strap to your back. It's like, oh, geez, how am I going to use this, right? If it doesn't kill me first, I'm going to the moon, So I can't tell you how much I appreciate you doing this and sharing your knowledge with us, and it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.